Tuesday, February 21st. Can you believe it? 2023. So, yesterday was President's Day, and the kids had off from school, but I also had a dental appointment. And then for the middle school, where Ellen, who's in eighth grade, we had teacher conference meetings, really. There was quite a few of them. But I have to say, you really are impressed when you see your teachers really taking an interest in your child and just sort of endless compliments about how great of a student they are. I mean, of course, like any student, you could always do a bit better and participate a bit more, but they were really thinking this kid's like something. So it's like, yeah, that's great. So anyway, now we're on Tuesday. So it feels like Monday starting the week. And this is MikeRatner.com if you don't know. So I hadn't done quite a bit in my usual routine. I had a great start to the new year, really being productive with my writing. I am working on the book proposal for IGO. So you can check out the writing at igoism.com. Yeah, IGO, I-G-O, I-S-M.com. The selfie of the mind. So, but I want to talk a little bit more on the other project. You always have to have a backup proposal, right? If you meet with a book agent or a potential publisher, or you're pitching a movie, right? And you're in front of some producers, and they don't like your idea. You're only going to get this one time opportunity to pitch, so you better have a backup. So my ultra book, I'm talking about the ultra ego, is lovingconversations.com. And so that had sort of formatted into a podcast last year, and now this year I'm going to be doing more interviews with experts in the field of relationship and couples therapy, perhaps. But really, it's more about the idea as an outgrowth of my graduate project on communityconversations.com, where you get a community together to talk about local empowerment, social issues, get to know your neighbor, and sort of, have some sort of revelations of, aha, you think that way too, or hey, you're not so bad now that we get together. So this Loving Conversations is kind of going from, group into something a bit more intimate. And it can be a number of people involved inside the inner sanctum here, sort of the inner circle where, you have these really deep conversations. And the premise to me is loving because, number one, I love having really conscious conversations. It's like, wow, that's what the relationship connection, the ties are all about. And when you can strengthen them, or at least create a foundation for things to sort of emerge, all the more. So some people are having challenges with that. And relating to this, to why I'm doing the recording, is Valentine's Day was just last week. And I made an effort to outreach to different people, just say, hey, really great that you're my friend or my connect, you're part of my community, relation. And there were some people, a couple I couldn't find their addresses for it, and the one that I did put the most effort into, I'm not sure my effort got there because when I sent that package was tracked was the wrong address, and then I sent to a second address, and I don't know if it got there. I mean, I don't know if they're there. But anyway, I thought about it, and it's like, well, I could read into this a couple ways. Like, I'm not hearing anything back. They just might not have gotten it, but at the same time, they might not just take any interest. Or like, oh, this guy again. So I don't know. It could have the clown mentality. It's like, uh-oh, he's up to tricks again. So anyway, it was the attempt to sort of, we're getting older in age and you want to sort of make sure that, in a mature way, you sort of let people know that you appreciate them, they're in your thoughts. And some of them, you've been out of touch for forever, so you just really don't know how to get in contact with them. But anyway, so I want to look at this in another different angle because my last recordings prior to my full attention on, Valentine's Day, I better do this right. I was talking about the Weltschloss, which is the German word I made up, the only German word I've ever made up. Weltschloss is world dwelling or world building, as it's translated into English. But it's from a philosophical perspective, ontologically talking about being as we are in the world, and the dwelling within it, what's sort of felt. And I talked about the gems, where we have certain things that are given to us, and then I talk about the environs, like how the effect of the environment, what we're also affecting, and back and forth, creates sort of the milieu, which affects our setting. And so that's all there. If you can spell weltslosh.com or just go to my aggregate website, grandtourideas.com, or go to my CV page at mikeratner.com. There'll be some stuff there. So anyway, yeah, we're going on 5 minutes right here. So let me get to the point. So I thought, well, in this world slash dimension of what's felt and experienced, there's a lot of different interpretations that could happen. Like, what happens if she, in this case, did get my outreach? It was quite nice. It was a little stuffy doll that said, hey, miss you, think about you, in a nice way. And it's a follow up from decades ago where there was another stuffy. It was a teddy bear put in a doorway. And I know that she got that one. So I thought it'd be fun to do the outreach. You just don't know. But there is the desire to create or to reestablish a connection of some sort because the person was really significant in some capacity in your life, and who knows what your situation is. But the desire to do that, but maybe that's not felt on the other side. But you don't know because you don't know if it was received. You've got no way to do it. You thought you had an email, it didn't bounce back, but you don't know. It's like you can't push it beyond that because it's like you might be showing up in unwanted territory. And plus, it doesn't really represent, who you are and the way that you're trying to be in this case. So you got to kind of let it go. But you do think in the back of your mind, it's like, well, what was the response if it was received? There was a laugh, but then there was some caution to respond because, well, what's going to open up if that happens, right? What's going to be, next? It's just like, gonna have a crazy man show up. It's like, yeah, right, man, let's start the party. No, it's not like that at all for me. But it's sort of like, hey, it's sort of more, I guess, the quest to sort of bridge a gap, and it's a bit into the unknown. So you don't know, right? So it could just be like, well, no interest, and that's it. So in any case, I did my part. I think, So in the case of where the combination of welt slosh and having loving conversations go, you want to create an invite. And you also have to be very allowing that it might not be received. If you think about things in the way that we would evolve in our consciousness, we have to have a full consideration, the full spectrum here, right? Because if we're lost in some dimension, it's okay to have feelings and have certain moods or passing fancies where you're always thinking about something or someone perhaps, and you get motivated, and then you start scratching your head later and go, well, why did I do that for? But so in this case, it was best intentions, and you're sending someone love, and it was Valentine's Day, and it was a significant anniversary on top of that. So that was sort of kind of made it sort of right. Because if you don't do it, then there's no acknowledgement, and it's sort of like that relationship's lost forever unless they got interested in reaching out. But would they be able to find you? I mean, my last known address from those people was in Shanghai, China. So how do you find me there? But I'm not there. I'm here now in Wisconsin, of all places. So, yeah, so it's a little reflection on things. It's like, all right, well, there's something that, you did. Now we need to move on. So I'm going to put the focus back on the I Go book proposal and loving conversations. And again, the whole premise is like if you had something out there, and this is for those people perhaps who take an interest in my work, or thinking, hey, loving conversations, that's an interesting premise of an idea, because there's a lot of books out there from crucial conversations and difficult conversations. This is about loving conversations. So creating the premise where you have an invitation. And we only go there, in my work or the quote unquote teaching that I'm talking about, because unless it's permission oriented, where the permission is granted, you're invading someone's space. Now you could, okay, knock on the door, send a text or an email, or send a stuffy in a package. But anything beyond that is sort of like, hmm, it's like you did your part, you did it in the best way. It was well thought out. You thought, except not having the right address. But beyond that, it's like, hey, you got to let it go. But if you're receptive, you have the open invitation there. And at some point, perhaps the person comes around or they discover it in the trash, like, hey, this is a package for me. And oh, how sweet. And maybe it just takes time for it to sink in, to evolve, and to also get past how the framing of what have been associated to you and whatever you did or how you were in the past has to get cleaned out. And hopefully, your life experiences and the things that you encountered and your education and your direction sort of puts you on this path to where, it's very permission oriented, because when we have permission, we have freedom, and there's an allowing for people to be exactly how they are. And of course, you could have something in the back of your mind going, well, that ain't quite right. But, that's where they're at in the revolution. Just like, you're not expecting a baby to know physics. Maybe you were. Or a toddler to run the race. It's like, no, it's like, we are where we are in our place and space and time in the mess. Go to grandtourideas.com, find out all about what makes people messed up, and you'll have a philosophical introspection into some of these ideas. But the premise for me is having that loving space so that we are all welcome, and we want to keep it real, and it's right that you're here, right that you don't. It's okay. And then we look at things to make them, if we want them to be enlightened, to make it easy. Because if you don't have ease, you're going to have disease, right? So this kind of consideration really creates uh, compassion and really consideration for the company that you keep. And it's conscious company, right? At least we hope, in which we are demonstrating this by our way of being. And in this way of compassion and consideration, kindness is really the best allowing, the best that you can have, that people have their permission to be, and you honor them for how they are, what they're going through, what the considerations are. But you take a stand for something, and this is the position. And also the premise for that loving conversation to one day occur, but it's always happening within my way of being, my thoughts of you or how you're positioned or thinking. It's like it's a consideration for it. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. And then for some people, the permission or the allowing is that they're now able to let it go. It could have been that story that repeated over and over in their mind. You've been around these people, every time they talk about that thing or whatever happened to them, it's the same story over and over, and they seem to fail to realize, I call these RTPs, repeated thought patterns, where they've said this to you over and over and over. And I know some people who are very dear to me. It's like, oh my God, I know I'm going to hear the story again. And you don't know what triggers it. It could be a prion. You could read about my work at prions, interesting about entities, PRYONS.com, sort of more thought entity. Could be emotional. But anyway, whatever triggers it, you're going to hear that story over and over again. And you help people in this way through this idea of presence or this ultra beingness that welcomes a loving conversation. And through this level of kindness, and it's really an attunement, there's no agenda or pretense other than just simply being present, practicing this, that breakthroughs happen. People just let it go. They go, oh my God. And decades literally of where conflict or division had occurred, things heal. There are bridges crossed, in a delightful way where people are distributing, their love and kindness, candy and flowers perhaps too, or stuffies. And this is where we're at in this moment in time. So whether that bridge gets crossed or not, you have the invitation open. It's a green light, and you've done it in the best way. You've really cleaned up your act. And this is what the presentation is. And the present is a gift. So as things are allowed to be, it's mostly appreciated in this dimension. That's all that's being asked. What else can be expected of you? Right? I mean, if you owe somebody some money, pay them back, and clean up your mess after where you sat. Take out the trash, whatever. Be presentable in the way that you are, and or in this dimension, we can really have a little bit more delightfulness in our way of being. I call this a self-liberation movement. We all have this opportunity to present ourselves in this light. All right, I've rambled on enough for today, but I know it's been a while, probably been a couple of weeks. I mean, I know I did some, I just haven't put them up maybe a couple weeks ago. But anyway, thank you. You can get more of this kind of stuff at mikesmastermind.com, Mike's Mastermind, and lovingconversations.com. I think we'll put this. Oh, yeah, I did do one on Valentine's Day for lovingconversations.com. I got a lot going on in my mind, folks. And anyway, I've gotten through some things here, so on to the next venture. And thank you so much for your listening and feedback, and hopefully there's something to decipher here that entices you. All right, and I'm MikeRatner.com. Thanks very much.